Emma sat quietly on the couch, trying to smile as laughter filled her home. It was a Friday night in Austin, and her husband Ryan had invited his old college friends over for a weekend reunion. The house was alive with jokes, music, and the smell of pizza. But inside, Emma felt like a stranger. Ryan was laughing louder than she'd heard in years, and his friends were teasing each other like teenagers again. She tried to join in, but every time she spoke, her words were drowned out by louder voices. She looked at Ryan and felt a mix of warmth and distance. 6 years of marriage had softened the fire between them. They weren't unhappy, but they weren't close either. He was always busy, always distracted, and she often felt invisible. But tonight, seeing him so full of energy, she remembered the man she fell in love with, carefree, funny, and kind. For a moment, she was glad he had his friends back. Jake, one of Ryan's closest friends, noticed her quietness. He smiled at her and said, "You're too quiet, Emma. You used to be the life of the party." "Oh?" She laughed softly, unsure what to say. Ryan chuckled. "Don't worry, Jake. She's just shy tonight." Emma felt a sting in her chest. Shy? She wasn't shy. She was just tired of trying to fit into spaces where she didn't belong. As the night went on, the drinks flowed freely. The men began sharing old college stories, late-night adventures. Wild parties. Things Emma didn't really want to hear but pretended to enjoy. They joked about the past, and every so often, Jake or another friend would include her in their teasing. "Emma, did Ryan ever tell you how hopeless he was with women?" one said, laughing. Emma smiled politely, replying, "I can imagine." She looked at Ryan, hoping for a shared laugh. But he only grinned with his friends, not even glancing her way. When the first bottle was empty, Ryan poured her another glass of wine. "Come on, Em," he said. "Loosen up. Have fun." She forced a smile and took a small sip. The words echoed strangely in her head. "Have fun?" Jake leaned forward. "You've got to admit Ryan's lucky. You're way out of his league." The group laughed, and Emma felt her cheeks warm. Ryan didn't defend her modestly or say anything. He just laughed too. That small moment, that easy laughter, hit her harder than she expected. It wasn't jealousy or anger. It was the realization that Ryan didn't seem to notice her discomfort anymore. The game they played turned into one of those truth or dare type things. Harmless questions, lighthearted jokes. Who was your first love? What's the craziest thing you've done? The answers got sillier as the night went on. When someone asked Ryan what he found most attractive in a woman, he smiled and said, "Confidence." Jake teased, "Then you married the wrong woman." The group erupted in laughter. Emma froze. For a second, the room blurred. Ryan looked at her and said, "Relax. He's joking." She smiled weakly, pretending it was funny. But deep inside, something cracked. It wasn't the joke that hurt, it was that Ryan didn't protect her. Didn't even seem to care that she was uncomfortable. As the laughter died down, Emma excused herself and walked to the kitchen. She leaned on the counter, breathing slowly. Through the wall, she could hear their laughter continuing, Ryan's voice the loudest of all. The man she'd married, the one who once held her hand in crowded rooms, was now part of a crowd that made her feel alone. Jake entered the kitchen a few minutes later, grabbing a bottle of water from the counter. "You okay?" he asked, softer now. "They can be a bit much sometimes." Emma smiled. "I'm fine. Just tired." He nodded, looking at her for a moment longer than felt comfortable. "You're tougher than you look," he said before walking out. She stood there, frozen. There was something in his tone, something she didn't like. She wanted Ryan to come in, to notice her unease, to tell his friends to tone it down. But he didn't. When she returned to the living room, Ryan was sitting with his arm over the couch, a lazy grin on his face. "There she is," he said, handing her a drink. "You're missing all the fun." Emma sat down quietly, not wanting to make a scene. The others were laughing again, but she was lost in her thoughts. She tried to remember the last time she felt truly close to Ryan. The last time he looked at her with love instead of casual familiarity. She couldn't remember. Hours passed before the group finally began to settle down. Some were too tired, others too drunk to keep talking. Jake and another friend were still laughing at some inside joke, but Ryan seemed distant now, tired, almost detached. When everyone went to their rooms, Ryan and Emma were left alone in the living room. The silence between them was heavy. He looked at her with a faint smile. "You were great tonight," he said softly. "Everyone likes you, likes me." She asked, puzzled. "Yeah," he said, shrugging. "They all said you were fun. It's nice to see you relax for once." She wanted to ask him what he meant. She wanted to tell him she didn't feel fun. She felt exposed, watched, misunderstood, and strangely small. But instead, she just nodded. "Good night, Ryan." He kissed her cheek lightly and went upstairs, leaving her alone on the couch. The sound of the clock ticking filled the room. Emma sat there for a long time, staring at the half-empty glasses and scattered cards. Something about the night didn't sit right. She couldn't explain it, but she felt as though something had shifted between them. Something invisible, but real. It wasn't one thing. It was a series of small moments: his silence when she needed his words, his laughter when she needed his comfort, his distance when she needed his love. Each one a tiny crack in the wall of their marriage. She looked toward the staircase where Ryan had disappeared moments ago and whispered to herself, "What's happening to us?" The laughter from earlier still echoed faintly in her ears, but now it sounded hollow. She realized she hadn't truly laughed that night, not once. Outside, the city lights glowed softly and the wind brushed against the windows. Inside, Emma sat alone with a quiet ache growing in her chest. She didn't know it yet. But this was only the beginning, the first thread in a story that would unravel everything she thought she knew about love, loyalty, and the man she had promised her life to. And somewhere deep inside, a quiet voice whispered that nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after the party. Sunlight slipped through the kitchen blinds as Emma stood making coffee, her hands slightly shaking. The laughter from the night before still echoed in her mind. Ryan came down humming, acting like everything was perfectly normal. He kissed her cheek and said, "Morning, beautiful. You were amazing last night." She looked at him, confused. "Amazing?" she asked. "Yeah," he said with a grin. "Everyone said you were great fun. They really like you." Emma smiled faintly, but the word fun felt strange. She wasn't sure what he meant. She'd barely said much last night. She'd smiled, nodded, and tried not to feel out of place. Yet Ryan seemed proud of her, as if she had done something special. She brushed the thought aside, trying not to overthink. By noon, Ryan's friends were awake again, loud and joking as if the night had never ended. They decided to go to the lake nearby, just like old times. Emma didn't feel like going, but Ryan insisted. "Come on, Em, it'll be good for you." "Fresh air, sunshine, laughter," he said, wrapping his arm around her. She wanted to believe him. At the lake, everyone was in high spirits. The men jumped into the water, splashing and shouting. Emma sat by the shore with her feet in the sand, watching them. Jake came over, dripping wet, and sat beside her. "You're too quiet again," he said playfully. "You've got to relax around us." She smiled politely. "I'm relaxed enough," she replied, though her tone was distant. Jake leaned back on his hands, glancing at her. "Ryan's lucky, you know," he said. "Not many wives would hang out with their husbands' friends and fit in so easily." She didn't respond, pretending to watch the water. There was something about Jake's tone that made her uneasy, but she didn't want to make a scene. Ryan was nearby, laughing with another friend, completely unaware. Later that afternoon, they grilled food by the water. Ryan handed her a drink and said, "You see? Everyone's having a good time. This is how life should be, no worries, just fun." She nodded, forcing a smile, but inside she felt detached. She noticed the way the guys looked at her, sometimes not in a kind or friendly way, but like she was part of the entertainment. Every joke, every teasing comment seemed to point towards something she couldn't quite name. When they got home that evening, Emma was exhausted. She went upstairs to shower and found herself standing under the warm water, thinking about the past 2 days. Something was wrong, but Ryan's happiness made her doubt her own feelings. Maybe she was just being too serious, too sensitive. Maybe this was how friends behaved, light teasing, casual fun. But deep down, she knew something felt off. After dinner, Ryan's friends gathered around the living room fire pit outside. They talked, laughed, and passed around drinks again. Emma joined them, but she sat quietly, her mind elsewhere. At one point, she caught Jake looking at her from across the fire. His gaze wasn't friendly, it was knowing, almost smug. She looked away immediately. Ryan leaned toward her and whispered, "You were a hit last night. They couldn't stop talking about you." Emma frowned. "What do you mean?" she asked. Ryan chuckled, sipping his drink. "You really don't notice, do you? You've got charm, Emma. Everyone enjoyed your company." She froze. Everyone enjoyed your company. The way he said it didn't sound innocent. She turned to look at him, but he was already laughing with his friends again, as if nothing strange had been said. Her heart pounded. She thought back to last night, Jake's teasing, Ryan's laughter, the way the others looked at her. Was there some inside joke she didn't understand? Did Ryan say something to them about her? The more she thought, the sicker she felt. A few moments later, Jake made a toast. To the best host and his amazing wife. Everyone cheered, raising their glasses. Ryan smiled proudly while Emma just stared at the fire, her stomach turning. The word amazing echoed again. It wasn't praise, it felt like a secret message she wasn't part of. After the others went inside, Emma stayed by the fire, staring at the fading embers. Ryan came out to join her, sitting beside her with his drink. "You okay?" he asked casually. She didn't answer right away. Finally, she said softly, "What did you mean earlier when you said everyone enjoyed my company?" Ryan looked at her, puzzled at first, then shrugged. "Nothing bad. Just that you were the center of attention for once." "They liked you? Liked me? How?" she pressed. He laughed, brushing it off. "You're reading too much into it, Em. It was all in good fun. Don't take things so seriously." She stared at him, her chest tightening. Good fun. There it was again, that word that had been haunting her since last night. To him, everything was a game. Her feelings, her dignity, their marriagette was all just part of the atmosphere. When she didn't respond, Ryan sighed. "You need to loosen up, Emma. You're always so tense lately. Can't you just enjoy the moment?" She turned to him, tears filling her eyes. "Enjoy the moment," she whispered. "You think I enjoy being laughed at? Being looked at like that?" Ryan frowned. "You're imagining things. Nobody was laughing at you. You're just tired." She shook her head, speechless. There was no point arguing. He didn't see what she saw. Or maybe he didn't, chose to ignore it. She went inside, leaving him by the fire. Upstairs, she sat on the edge of the bed, her heart heavy. The house felt colder now, even though it was filled with warmth and noise. Downstairs, Ryan's laughter mixed with the others again, carefree and thoughtless. Emma looked at herself in the mirror. Her eyes were tired, her face pale. She tried to understand when things had started falling apart. When had Ryan stopped being her partner and started treating her like part of the background? When had fun become something that made her feel ashamed? Lying in bed later, she could still hear their voices faintly through the window. Jake's laugh, Ryan's deeper tone, the clinking of bottles. She turned away, closing her eyes, but sleep wouldn't come. Her thoughts raced memories of the night before, the strange looks, the teasing, the way Ryan said everyone enjoyed your company. It dawned on her slowly, painfully. He hadn't defended her because he didn't think there was anything to defend. Maybe he thought the jokes were harmless. Maybe he liked the attention she got from his friends. Maybe he thought that was fun. By the time the house went quiet, tears had already dried on her cheeks. She felt small and alone, surrounded by people yet unseen. Downstairs, Ryan closed the door softly, thinking his wife was asleep. He never noticed the hurt in her eyes or the silent distance growing between them. For Emma, the meaning of fun had changed forever. It wasn't laughter or lightness anymore. It was the sound of her trust cracking quietly in a room full of smiles. And as she lay awake in the dark, one truth settled deep in her chest: something in their marriage had shifted, and it would never shift back again. The next evening, the house felt heavier than ever. Emma moved quietly through the kitchen, pretending to clean while her thoughts raced. Ryan's friends were still around, laughing and joking as if nothing had changed. But for her, everything had. Every look, every word from the past 2 days replayed in her head. The teasing, Ryan's silence, his careless laughter, it all added up to one painful truth. The man who was supposed to protect her dignity had turned it into entertainment. When Ryan entered the kitchen, she didn't turn around. "You've barely spoken all day," he said, pouring himself a drink. "Are you mad at me?" She took a slow breath. "Do you really not know why?" He leaned against the counter. "Because I let my friends tease you a little. Emma, it was harmless." She turned to face him, her eyes tired but steady. "Harmless. They made jokes about me, Ryan. They looked at me like I was part of their game. And you," her voice shook slightly, "you just watched." Ryan frowned, clearly uncomfortable. "You're overreacting. You know how guys are. It's just fun." There it was again, fun. The same word that had followed her like a shadow. She felt her heart sink. "You keep saying that," she said softly. "But do you know what's not fun? Feeling like the person I love the most doesn't care how others see me." "You laughed, Ryan. You didn't even try to stop it." He sighed, rubbing his forehead. "You always take things too seriously. You're turning nothing into something big." Her voice broke a little. "It's not nothing to me." Ryan set his glass down with a small thud. "Look, Emma, you've been distant for months. I thought having my friends here would lighten things up. Maybe it would help you relax. Instead, you're making me feel guilty for having a good time." She stared at him, disbelief washing over her. "You think this is about you feeling guilty? I felt humiliated in my own house, and you're worried about your fun weekend." He didn't answer. He just looked away, his silence speaking louder than words. Emma swallowed hard, her chest tightening. "Do you even love me anymore?" she asked quietly. Ryan hesitated. The pause was long enough to give her the answer before he even spoke. "Of course I do," he said finally, but it sounded flat, mechanical, like something said out of habit, not truth. Tears filled her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You used to look at me like I mattered," she whispered. "Now it's like I'm just another piece of furniture in this house. You don't see me, Ryan. You just see your comfort, your image, your friends." Ryan exhaled deeply. "I think you need rest," he said softly, trying to end the conversation. But his calm tone only fueled her hurt. "I don't need rest," she replied. "I need respect." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The faint noise of laughter from outside floated in through the window. Ryan's friends were still out there, probably telling stories, completely unaware that inside, a marriage was crumbling. Emma finally turned away. "I can't do this anymore," she said, her voice shaking. "Not like this." Ryan looked alarmed. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying I'm done pretending everything's fine. I'm tired of being the quiet, smiling wife who lets things slide." She looked at him one last time. "You stood there watching me feel small, and you called it fun. That's not love, Ryan." He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came. She saw it in his eyes, the fear, the confusion, but not regret. Not yet. Emma walked upstairs, her heart pounding. She packed a few clothes into a small suitcase, her hands trembling as she zipped it shut. She wasn't running away in anger, she was leaving out of survival. Staying would mean losing herself piece by piece. Ryan came up behind her. "You're being dramatic," he said, his tone a mix of frustration and disbelief. "You're really going to leave because of some jokes." She turned to him, tears finally streaming down her face. "No, Ryan, I'm leaving because you stopped being on my side." He took a step toward her, but she stepped back. "I just wanted us to have a good time," he said weakly. Emma shook her head. "You wanted to have a good time? You never asked if I was okay." She grabbed her bag and moved past him. "And you never noticed that I wasn't." Downstairs, the house was quiet now. The guests had gone to their rooms. Emma walked to the door, each step feeling heavier than the last. She paused, her hand on the doorknob, hoping he would stop her, say something that would make her believe he still cared. But Ryan just stood there in silence. His pride, his confusion, whatever it was, kept him frozen. She opened the door and stepped out into the cool night. The street was empty, the air crisp. For the first time in years, she felt both lost and free. She didn't have a plan. She didn't know where she would go. But she knew she couldn't stay in a house where her heart felt like an afterthought. She walked to her car, her vision blurry from tears. Before starting the engine, she looked back one last time. Through the living room window, she could see Ryan standing there, motionless. The man she once trusted with her soul now looked like a stranger. She whispered goodbye, even though he couldn't hear her. As she drove away, the memories of their life together flooded her mind. The early days of laughter. The long talks, the shared dreams. She wondered when things had shifted, when love had turned into habit and care had turned into complacency. But the more she thought, the more she realized this moment was inevitable. When respect fades, love can't survive long after it. Ryan stood by the window long after her car disappeared down the street. The house that once felt warm now seemed painfully empty. He picked up his drink, then set it down untouched. He didn't know why he couldn't stop her. Maybe he thought she'd come back. Maybe he didn't understand how deep the hurt had gone. He sat down on the couch, staring at nothing. The silence was deafening. The laughter of his friends earlier now felt like ghosts echoing in the corners of the room. For the first time, Ryan began to feel something unfamiliar regret. The morning after Emma left, the house was painfully quiet. The laughter that once filled the rooms was gone, replaced by the hum of the refrigerator and the ticking clock. Ryan walked through the kitchen, noticing her empty mug by the sink. Her sweater still on the chair, her scent faint in the air. It hit him like a wave. She was really gone. For the first time in years, he felt the weight of silence. His friends were still asleep, unaware that something had shattered in the middle of the night. When they finally came downstairs, laughing and joking about breakfast, Ryan barely spoke. Jake asked, "Where's Emma?" Ryan's jaw tightened. "She left," he said flatly. The others fell quiet. Someone tried to lighten the mood, but the words didn't matter. Ryan's world already felt smaller. After his friends left later that afternoon, Ryan walked through the house in slow disbelief. Every corner carried a memory: Emma reading by the window, her laughter in the kitchen, the way she'd hum while folding laundry. Each memory now felt like a reminder of everything he had taken for granted. He sat on the couch and stared at the wall for hours, unable to think of what to do next. Days passed, but Emma didn't call. She didn't text, not even a message to say she was safe. Ryan told himself she just needed space. But deep down, he knew she was done. Still, he couldn't accept it. He tried reaching out, leaving voicemails that sounded more like apologies wrapped in confusion. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said in one. "Can we talk, please?" But there was no reply. One evening, as he sat alone, he noticed something on her bedside tabla, folded piece of paper tucked under the lamp. He hadn't seen it before. His heart pounded as he picked it up, his name written in her handwriting. He unfolded it slowly, afraid of what he might read. "Ryan, I didn't want to leave this way. But I realized something: love doesn't disappear in one moment. It fades every time someone you trust stops listening, every time they let you feel small and call it fun. You didn't hurt me once. You hurt me slowly in silence. I kept waiting for you to see me again, but you never did. I'm not angry anymore. I'm just tired. I loved you, Ryan, with all I had, but I can't stay where I have to beg to be respected. You didn't need to protect me from anyone. You just needed to stand beside me. Please take care of yourself. I'll always wish you well, but I can't come back." Emma Ryan's hands shook as he read the letter again and again. Her words cut through every excuse he had made, every time he had told himself it was just fun. It wasn't just a letter, it was a mirror showing him everything he refused to see. That night, he sat in the dark living room, replaying the last week in his mind. The laughter, the teasing, his careless words, all of it seemed different now. He remembered how she'd looked at him, desperate for understanding, and how he'd brushed it off. He realized that her silence that night wasn't anger, it was heartbreak. For days, Ryan went through the motions of life, but nothing felt real. Work didn't matter. His friends stopped calling. Jake sent a quick text, "You okay, man?" But Ryan didn't reply. He couldn't. He didn't even want to see them. He resented them for the way they'd treated Emma. But even more, he resented himself for allowing it. At night, he'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, hearing her voice in his head. "You didn't see me, Ryan." He realized that was true not just during the party, but for years. He had been blind to how lonely she'd become beside him. Meanwhile, Emma was starting a new chapter. She'd gone to stay with her cousin in Denver, far away from the noise of Austin. The first few weeks were hard. She missed home, missed the familiar sounds of her life, Evan Ryan's voice sometimes. But every time she remembered the pain in his laughter, she reminded herself why she left. She wasn't running from him. She was returning to herself. In Denver, she got a small job at a local bookstore. It wasn't glamorous, but it was peaceful. People there didn't know her story, they just saw a quiet woman with kind eyes. Slowly, she began to heal. She'd walk home each evening through the crisp air. The mountains faint in the distance, and she'd breathe a little easier each day. Months passed. She stopped checking her phone for messages that never came. She started writing again, filling notebooks with thoughts she'd buried for years. Sometimes, when she thought about Ryan, she didn't feel anger anymore, just a sad kind of gratitude. He had broken her heart, yes, but he had also shown her what kind of love she would never accept again. Back in Austin, Ryan tried to move on, but he couldn't. Every time he saw something that reminded him of her, the mug she loved, the photo from their first trip, the smell of her perfume, he felt the same ache. He had tried dating again once, but it didn't last. Nobody laughed like Emma. Nobody listened like she did. He realized too late that her quiet strength had been the center of his world even when he didn't see it. On their wedding anniversary, Ryan found himself sitting alone on the porch, holding Emma's letter. It had been nearly a year since she left, but the words still stung like fresh wounds. He whispered into the empty night, "I'm sorry, Emma. I really am." The wind brushed against his face, but there was no reply, only silence. He thought about calling her, but he knew it wouldn't change anything. She had found peace, and he had to live with what he'd done. Some lessons, he realized, come too late to fix, but never too late to understand. Years later, Ryan still kept the letter in his drawer. He never remarried. Every now and then, he'd reread it, his eyes lingering on the line, "You didn't need to protect me. You just needed to stand beside me." It became a reminder of the love he lost, not through betrayal or anger, but through neglect. Emma eventually met someone new, a kind man named David, who listened when she spoke and never made her feel small. When she told him her story one evening, he didn't judge her or ask for details. He simply said, "You deserved better." And for the first time, she believed it. Years later, when she looked back, Emma didn't see her marriage as a failure. She saw it as a lesson, a painful one, but necessary. It taught her that love without respect is like a fire without warmth. It burns, but never comforts. Ryan, on the other hand, carried his lesson quietly. Whenever he met people going through hard times, he told them never take silence for peace. Sometimes it's the sound of someone giving up. And every year, on the same autumn evening, he would pour himself a small glass of wine, unfold that old letter, and whisper into the air, "I remember you, Emma, I always will." The house stayed quiet, the way it had since the day she left. But somewhere far away, under a different sky, a woman smiled softly, knowing she had finally found the peace that once seemed impossible. And that was how two people who once shared everything became a memory, one of heartbreak, of lessons learned too late, and of love that taught them both what it truly meant to see and be seen.